So thankful to be able to finish the book of Acts with you guys. It's all just it's a blessing. You go through parts of your life and you just don't realize when you're making decisions what all the outcomes are going to be. And if you're like me, I've made a lot of decisions in my life rather hastily. Just kind of decided to do something and went and did it. And most of the time, those things have turned out pretty well. Sometimes they don't go so well. But I've never been a person who just sits and plans everything and goes through all the details and tries to figure it all out. And I don't mean to say this in a way that sounds, hyper spiritual or look at me or anything like that. But I truly believe that we can just trust God. We can believe that He loves us, that He's going to put us through what He puts us through. And there's going to be difficult times and hard things. But we can trust Him that He's good and that He loves us. This morning, Acts 28, it's the conclusion of the book of Acts. And there's, right out the gate, there's just a weird thing that happens. There's a trap there, so don't get caught up. Let's read. We'll start with verses 1 through 6, and we'll break that down, and then we'll just kind of continue on likewise. In Acts chapter 28, starting in verse 1, it says, "After we were brought safely through, we then learned that the island was called Malta." So if you're unfamiliar, they've been through shipwrecks. It's been a very terrible ordeal that they've kind of gone through together. Paul and the companions that are with him, the other prisoners, and also the sailors, the captain of the ship, the owner. Everybody's kind of there, as well as the soldiers. And so they crash land on this ship, or on this island. They figure out that the name of it's Malta. It says, "The native people showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all, because it had begun to rain and was cold. When Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and put them on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat and fastened on his hand. When the native people saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, 'No doubt this man is a murderer. Though he has escaped the sea, justice has not allowed him to live.' He, however, shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm. They were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. But when they had waited a long time and saw no misfortune come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god." What a fickle group. So they crash onto this beach, or they crash on they wash up onto the beach, I suppose is the best way to say it. And so often when we read Scripture, we read it, there's a sentence that's covering an hour or a day or however long it's taking. But just remember, as we've gone through this, how difficult this ordeal has been, how terrifying it was. Remember that they were for, if I remember correctly, it was 7 days, 4 days or 7 days, where they couldn't see the stars at night, they couldn't see the sun during the day. They had no way of navigating. They were terrified that they were going to go down and run into what is basically a shallow sandbar that shifts around down in the southern part of where they were. So they're terrified that they're going to be marooned in the middle of the ocean and have no escape. So as they're doing everything to get to this point, imagine now you've washed up on the shore of some island. You don't know where you are. You don't really know what's going on. What is the first thought that's going to go through your head? Mine, beyond the first thing is probably like, oh, thank God. like we made it, it's dry land, no more, none of that. But then the next thing that's going to be happening in my head is, who is here? Who lives here? Whose doorstep did I just land on? And there are so many opportunities all throughout this book, really, but especially throughout this latter part of the journey, where, man, God's providence is all over this. He wants Paul to make it to Rome. And he has demonstrated that over and over and over again. Where they landed, the people could have been hostile. There are stories throughout history where people land on a beach and they don't make it inland. You know what I mean? There's his name's David Allen Chow. He went to North Sentinel Island. If you don't know what North Sentinel Island is, you should look it up. A very interesting place. It's a group called the Andaman, and they are maybe not the last, but they are one of the most unreached people groups on the planet. There's a 5-kilometer exclusion zone around their island. You can't go there. It's illegal. So this guy was a follower of Christ. He wanted to go there and share the gospel with them. He's like, there are people that are living for generation after generation with no knowledge of who God is, and they're dying, and I want to change that. So he goes there. He lands on the island. He kind of has to bribe people to get himself there. And he doesn't make it. He lives there about a day, and then they kill him. They bury him there on the island, and he's done. I mean, that is the thing that can happen, right? We understand that. That when we go out into this world, it's not like God has put a bubble of protection around us. He's not wrapped us in bubble wrap. Hard things happen. Families break up. People die. You don't know what all is going to happen every day. And so it's amazing to see all throughout this story that God has his hand of protection not only on Paul, but on his companions and these prisoners, everybody that's on the ship. It's like they are just wherever, as long as they go with Paul, they're good. So they get to this island, and the people, it's almost like they've got a cup of coffee waiting on them, right? You know, they've got a fire. They're like, hey, let's get you warmed up. It's rainy. This is no good. You look shipwrecked, and that's bad. Let's take care of you. It's like we have a joke about my cousin Mark. Said that if he fell off a cliff, he would land on a pile of old mattresses that were full of money. I've never met anybody like that in my life that just, no matter what he falls into, he just does well at it. I've got a couple of friends like that. They took all of it away from me. No, I'm just kidding. But it just seems like, man, they've fallen into a really good situation. And so then Paul is there, and he's grabbing sticks and getting ready to help kindle the fire even further, which is just that's a weird thought, isn't it? He's the victim in this situation. He's gone through a very terrible thing. And his first instinct there is to serve, to start working, to work on getting this fire for everybody. And the snake comes out and bites him. Like, what in the world? It's just such a strange situation. Because you would think that in all of this, God would just, hover Paul and his people and over to Rome, and okay, now we're good. No, he puts them through a terrible ordeal. I don't know about you. I've never been bit by a snake. Rick, I know you have. I know I visited the hospital for a couple people bit by a snake. I've never been bit by a snake. I've seen someone get bit by a snake really up close, and it made me never want to hold one again. Rick, I'm sure have you ever been bit by a snake? Or not today, okay. This week, maybe. It's Sunday, so it's the beginning of the week. But I've been bit by a turtle, and it's not as dangerous, but it is. No, it was a turtle. It was one out here, and it was stuck up here. I've never told anybody this before, I guess. It was stuck up trying to go into the door of the church. I don't know exactly why. But I thought, hey, put a little guy, I'll help you out. And I pick him up. And I know their heads come out really far, so I was way on the back of it. This thing had extra neck. I don't know. It wrapped around and got a hold of my hand. And they don't let go. If you ever get bit by a turtle, you just have to kill the thing. It was just on there. And I remember I was just kind of dangling from my hand. I thought, what? So there's no marks, but there may have been. I Mario'd that thing into the concrete wall, flung it off my hand, and it went dum 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 and landed. And then he just looked at me and took off walking again. I kicked his behind out of the door and let him be. But I'll tell you, the reaction that I had was not, oh, there's a turtle. If I got bit by a snake in this situation, I don't think I would just be like, huh. But it seems as though Paul just shakes it off. And it just, oh, okay, there you go. And the reaction of the people is not, let's help him. It's just, well, get it in the end, don't you? You survived the shipwreck, you made it through all this, but now you see God is obviously angry at this person. Boom. A snake comes out, you escape all the bad stuff, but it's still going to get you. So it means they immediately recognize this as some kind of a snake that was bad news. And they're waiting. I like that this is so vivid and descriptive that it says that they're waiting for him either to just fall over dead or to swell up. Now, I don't know if you know much about snake venom and the toxicity that comes along with that. But there are some where it's not only that it kills you, but it's just a bad way to go all the way around. So they had obviously seen this. They know what's going on. And then when Paul stands there, it says for a long time, I don't know if that was minutes or hours or what exactly, but it says that they look at him and they're like, well, I guess maybe he's a god. What a way. That's like not even a 180. That's a 10,080. I mean, they go way around and around and around to go from he's a bad murderer, should be punished by God, to now he's obviously a god. That's an incredible thing that in the midst of all this, that you have this just weird story of God's provision and protection, that no matter where they're landing, no matter what's going on, that God is still taking care of them. He's caring for them in the midst of it, even with bumps and bruises and difficulties. I don't think that as they were floating on these pieces of wood to get from the ocean to the shoreline, I don't know if you've ever done that where there's waves, but it's typically, the first time I went surfing, my friend took me out, and there was a hurricane that was about 500 miles off the coast, so we had a lot of big, heavy waves and really bad wind, and it was just, you couldn't tell where the waves were because it was just coming from everywhere. And that was the first time I'd ever been out, on a surfboard in this. And he basically said, if you can survive this, you'll be fine. You can make it through anything. But when you're in that situation, there's not a whole lot of, oh, this is nice. Oh, here, just float right in, and maybe this wave will carry me to shore. It's, I'm gonna die, and the waves are smashing me, and it all hurts, and I don't know what's up or down. They've gone through just pure chaos over and over and over again. But yet, throughout all of this, they're alive, they're protected, they're safe, and they're warm, and they're moving towards the next situation. God's providence and kindness haven't ended at the shore's edge. The island that they're on is inhabited by people that are friendly, that not only welcome these strangers, but go out of their way to take care of them. The strange moment where the snake bites them is just such a weird thing that is in the middle of this. I mean, there's so many weird things in this story already, but it's just such a strange thing to kind of have this, hey, here's this thing that happened. The snake bit him and they thought he was going to die. And he didn't. And he just shook it off into the fire. And that's a good way to get rid of snakes. I know, I'm sorry if you love snakes, but that's where they belong, I think. Some of them. Not all of them. The ones that bite you, though, I'm going to go with straight to fire. Most likely, we're not going to be in this exact situation. It's a rare thing that any of us sitting or standing in this room right now are going to be in a shipwreck on a deserted island, or a place that we don't know. It's possible. I mean, we all understand that there are things that can happen. There are choices that we could make today that could put us in places that are very dangerous, right? If you go back, 60, 70, 80 years to when you had missionaries that were literally going out and getting planes and flying into uncontacted people over and over again. They were going into places where they knew that there were cannibals. They were going into places where, it was dangerous. And it was a very real possibility that if you landed the plane, that you may not make it 5 steps away from it, that you might not survive. We understand this is a possibility. It's unlikely, but it's a possibility. If we choose to really surrender our lives and follow whatever He calls us to do, wherever He calls us to go, it's not that we then have exchanged our faithfulness or our surrender for His good blessings on our life. There are no guarantees. There's no rose garden. There's no, as long as you do what's right, I'll take care of you. You might die. You might share the gospel with somebody and they kill you for it. That is a very real thing that is happening as we speak right now in parts of our world. This idea that we follow God and He just takes care of us and lets us go on with our life and He just wants what's best for us. What's best for us is Him. He wants us to know Him and be known by him and to be in love with him and to follow him with everything that we have. But we may not be in this exact situation. But the way that we live in the midst of chaos that we encounter is a testimony to those around us, both an encouragement to our fellow believers that we walk with, and as a demonstration of our trust and hope in God to those non-believers that we encounter. See, the way that Paul reacted in this situation is so strange. That turtle bit me. A sentence I never thought I'd start with. But it immediately caused a reaction that I wasn't proud of in the moment. The other day, a lizard jumped on my leg when we were in the shed doing stuff. Natalie was standing there, and I screamed, not like a girl scream, but like a guttural, like something is going to get me kind of scream. And as maybe yell, let's go with yell. It was like a scream yell. As I'm reacting to that, I realize what it is, and it's like, the thought is in my head of how stupid, but still, I reacted. I'm saying that. It's amazing to me, though, that in the midst of this, Paul is just, snake's been. Let's toss that guy in. There he is. We can't see the sky. Let's eat some bread. It's all going to be okay. God has told me that we're going to make it through this. That's a strange way to live your life. But if we can live our life in the midst of the chaos that we encounter in such a way that it demonstrates to the people that are watching us that we're not blown about by every wave that hits us, that everything that happens doesn't destroy our faith, that we're not, this is the thing that I've encountered so often with people that I've counseled with or talked with, is they come to this part of their life. They're Christians, they believe, and they come to this point of problem, and they get real into Jesus. They're like, everything I have is his, and everything I do is his. If he'll just do this one thing for me, if he'll just put these things back together, if he'll just make this work, if he'll just give me this thing or whatever. And then it doesn't work out the way that they want it to work out. And they walk away. They don't believe that God is faithful, because he didn't do it the way that he wanted him. They wanted him to do it. That happens so often. We have this deep-seated belief that we're exchanging our faith for God's faithfulness or his goodness. And we're not. We don't have anything good to bring to him. We bring to him submission. And that's about it. A whole bunch of garbage. Baggage that he gets rid of. But that's the exchange, is our sinfulness for his righteousness, right? So as we go through this and we demonstrate that over and over again to a world that is watching us, more than with our words that we say, I go to church, or I do this thing, or I read this book, or I pray and I do these things. But when people see you and your life crumbles, and you still trust God, and you love him, and you find him to be faithful in the midst of it, that speaks 1,000 words that you could never say. That will make people understand something so much more about you than you could ever just explain to them or argue them into. Our lives, how we react in this world, is a true testimony to what we truly believe. In verse 7, it says, now in the neighborhood, I love that it calls it a neighborhood. Now in the neighborhood of that place were lands belonging to the chief man of the island, named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. It happened that the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery. And Paul visited him and prayed, and putting his hands on him, healed him. And when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. They also honored us greatly, and when we were about to sail, they put on board whatever we needed. The reason I don't like to plan things, maybe this is the way to say this, because my plans have never been as good as his. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've tried to plan things before. I've come up with stuff, and I've done things where I write out a whole plan. Detailed, exactly how things are going to go and what I'm going to do and how it's going to work. And then it doesn't work. And I watch what God does. And it's just incredible to watch what he does with just surrender, just submission, with just saying, okay, whatever you want, I'll do. I'll go with you. I'll follow you. You lead. I'm just bringing up the rear, basically. He does so much more than I could ever figure out how to do. I would never plan for Paul to shipwreck on an island. It doesn't make any sense to me. I would never plan for him to be bit by a snake. I would never plan for any of these ways that it's going on to happen the way that it's happening. And yet God is using this not in a happenstance sort of way, not, oh well, he hit this island, I better figure it out, and well, now it'll be good. No, God knows the beginning from the end. He's placed him in this specific place so that these people that would never have heard about Jesus, never experienced the power of seeing somebody healed, can experience that. And then they're doing it while Rome is footing the bill for everything, right? They're the ones that are taking care of them and protecting them and moving them through this. And God's like, yeah, you're going to go to Malta, and you didn't even know about it. It's going to be awesome. You're going to meet a guy. Don't you wish that God would just lay it all out for you? You were born, and there was just a book that was laying there, and you watched it, and you just read through it. You could see everything that was going to happen. Isn't it amazing to watch how God works in the midst of all of these things, though? So now you have Paul on his way to a trial, and while they're on the way there, not only, I got to believe some of these sailors and these ship captain people, they probably are hearing all about who God is and how faithful he is. They know that Paul is the one that has told them, like, hey, God's going to see us through this. My God, not your God, not this thing that's on the front of the ship, not these things that you're praying to, they're doing nothing. So my God, the true God, is going to see us through this. Now they're on this island. He's having to have something that's painful, and yet it's almost like it gives him credence with these people. It gives them the ability to talk to them. That the chief of the whole island is, hey, come and hang out at my house, in my neighborhood. I like that. And he doesn't even ask him to heal him. That Paul just takes care of it. And all these other people that are sick, they start coming and being healed by Paul. This is something that would not have happened if all the plans had just gone the way that they should have gone. If the itinerary had been kept, if they had just got on the ship and then got off at Rome, right? Sometimes life is bumpy and difficult and painful. God has purpose and plan in the midst of all of it. There's a double blessing to this story. Not only does God providentially save Paul and his companions and the rest of the crew, God also providentially sent Paul to a new place to demonstrate the power of God and heal the sick. This gave an opportunity to share the gospel. Oftentimes we see the unexpected storms and difficulties of life as the absence of God's presence and provision in our lives, or even as a punishment. However, it is often the very time that he's the closest, both growing our faith and using our lives in ways that we could never expect. I know for myself, this I guess confession, whenever there's been something that hits, a bad thing, some health thing, or just a crisis, it's the immediate thing to almost go like, God, where are you? Why would you let me have to deal with this? Why would you leave me when I need you? And I've found over and over again in the very midst of my faithlessness, my lack of faith, that God continues to be faithful. And that it's like the saying when you say hindsight is 20/20. It's the more that you go through these things and you see how good God is in the midst of all those things. It doesn't make it easier when your house burned down, or you have an unexpected health thing, or just life hands you a really big old bad situation. But it does change the outlook looking forward to it. You say, man, God, he took care of this thing. And I didn't really do anything to make that work. He just took care of it. And then this other thing happened, and he took care of that. And he used it for this thing over here that I never could have made work. And then this other thing happened to my friend, and I get to see how God works through their life and what he does. And over again, it begins to grow this faith within you to where when you see it coming up, you're like, man, this is going to be terrible. This thing that's happening, I don't want to do this. God is faithful. And he will see me through this. He will use this for his glory and for my good. I don't know how, but I know it's true. That's the kind of faith that God is trying to grow within us. That's why he allows us, I believe, to go through difficult things. I've also found that this is the time when he's the closest to me. When things are good and things are moving along the way they should, and there's really no issues, it's easy to kind of fall into this, I don't mean a rut, but maybe like a groove. You just kind of get going on things, and you look at life as now, well, everything's going pretty good. What do I need? What do I want? Where can I go? What do I need to experience? All of those things. But it's like, I've never been in battle, but I have to imagine that when you're in some type of a battle and people are shooting at you, you're not thinking about a whole lot of other stuff. You're pretty zeroed in on what exactly is happening in that moment. There are times in life where you go through crisis where you're not thinking about, man, it'd be nice if I could eat this thing, or I'd really like to go to this new restaurant, or this whatever. You're thinking, God, please see me through this right now. And you turn your attention and your affection and your hope and everything closer and closer to him because he's all you've got, and you know that. I found that sometimes when he allows me to go through difficult crisis in my life, it's where not only do I feel that he's closer to me, but I feel like I'm closer to him. I'm thankful oftentimes for those crises. So after 3 months, so they stayed there for a while, we set sail in a ship that had wintered in the island, a ship of Alexandria, with the twin gods as a figurehead. Putting in at Syracuse, we stayed there for 3 days. And from there, we made a circuit and arrived at Rhegium. And after one day, a south wind sprang up, and on the second day, we came to, I don't remember how to say this one, Puteoli, that's what I'm going with. There we found brothers, and were invited to stay with them for 7 days, and so we came to Rome. And the brothers there, when they heard about us, came as far as the Forum of Appius and 3 taverns to meet us. On seeing them, Paul thanked God and took courage. And when we came into Rome, Paul was allowed to stay by himself with the soldier that guarded him. So there's a couple things. The interesting thing right here is this. How do I get to my note? I don't know. When Luke is writing this, he says, he talks about the ship, and he says it has the twin figureheads, the twin god figureheads, or twin gods as figurehead. The figurehead is that thing that's sitting on the front of the boat. It's kind of like a hood ornament. But they would use these specific ones that were like the twin gods was Felix and I wrote it down, but I can't find my note there. Can't remember the 2 names, but it's 2 twin brothers that were gods that were the protectors of seafarers, basically. And so it's interesting to me, as you're reading this, and you think that these people have these ships, and most likely this ship is a slow-moving grain ship that's coming out of Alexandria, Egypt. That's where all the wheat came from and went to Rome. So when you got on one of these, like a big barge that you're just kind of floating on, there's no difficulties in that. They're not fast maneuvering. They're not, you get in a storm with it, it's probably going to be all right. You're just going to float on. But when Luke is writing this, he makes that a specific detail, which, number one, it gives you some historical understanding of maybe figuring out which ship this was or where it was and all that. You can match things up. But it's almost like this dig, where he's like, hey, that stupid thing you got on the front of your boat doesn't mean anything. Yeah, you ever think about that? I know I've shared it before. When I used to go to this Chinese restaurant, and they had the little Buddha down there in the bottom of the drink container, and he was sitting down there, and they would put cans of food for him. You sit him down there with him. And they would always be the same cans of food. And I thought, man, if I came every day and I put down some oranges in a can, which number one, like give him a can opener, I guess. But if I kept giving them to him and I kept sitting them there, I would eventually walk in and be like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? There's nothing happening. This is just a waste of time. And it's the same thing. He's like, see those twin gods that are on the front of that boat? Remember all that storm and everything? Remember those were the ones you were probably praying to? And they did nothing for you. Your ship was destroyed. It's like in this subtle, quick way, he's saying, there is no other help. There is no other God. There is nothing outside of the Father. There is one true God. Put your trust in him. Because none of this other stuff that you're going to trust in is going to do anything. You can put all the cans of oranges that you want to into that little cubby at the drink fountain, and nothing is ever going to happen with it. There is a true God. And I have to imagine that that would have a different amount of weight to these guys that he's on the ship with after going through what they just went through. Oh, here we go. The other side of this, it was pretty interesting because I couldn't figure out why he had written this. So he says they go to Rome. It says they're going to Rome, and they have brothers, which mean followers of Jesus, the church, that come out and they meet him as far as the Forum of Appius and 3 taverns. So these are 2 different little areas. One is, the Forum of Appius, that city would be, I think it's 43 miles away, and 3 taverns is 33 miles. So what is happening is that the church in Rome has gotten word that Paul is coming. And so what you would do back then is if you had a general was coming back from war and he was coming back to Rome, you would have people that would go all the way out to meet him wherever he was coming from, right? So it was the further out that you would go, it was like a more honoring thing. So, okay, we're going to meet you all the way, we're going to walk 50 miles to go and meet you, and then we're going to march back with you into Rome. That was this idea. It was a delegation of honor, would be kind of the idea of what it is. And so as they're going out into this place, it's not just that he's saying, hey, they were brothers and they came out, they were hanging out here and they were hanging out there. He's saying that these guys, the church in Rome, they came all the way. They walked, I don't know how long it would take me to walk 43 miles. Some of you probably have marched 43 miles. I don't know. I would be like, I'm going to take a break. I'm sorry. I know how long it took me to go 8 miles on the Appalachian Trail, and I was like, that was a whole day. 43 miles, I would be dead, I guess. But that's a long way. I can't think of a person, a celebrity or a political figure or anybody, outside of, I don't know, anybody, that if I found out was going to be somewhere where I was going to have to walk to, that I would go walk to meet him. It'd have to be Jesus. If I found out Jesus was going to be in Florala, I'd walk over there to meet him. Like, that's about it. That's a long way. But this is what they're demonstrating, is this not only devotion, but they're wanting to be like, hey, man, like you're killing it. You're doing it. Like you are the not the founder of our faith, but you're the one that is like the forerunner of what we're doing. We want you to know how much we care about what it is that you've done for us. We want you to understand that we're with you. We want to walk with you all this way back. And that's a really cool thing, that in this storyline, you're just kind of catching these small fragments of cool things over and over again. So they're greeting him as a returning, conquering general, or as a king almost. So they're ready to continue their journey. They're heading back to Castor and Pollux. That's the twin gods. But they're going back to Rome, and it gives you a small detail that says that Paul is allowed to stay just by himself with one soldier who's guarding him. This helps to kind of place everything, because remember, we're talking about Nero is the king of Rome, or the emperor of Rome, the Caesar. And Nero is a bad person. Later on in his rule, he's the reason that you get so many of the Christians that are being persecuted and going out everywhere else. because Nero was trying to kill all of them. But at this point in his rule, he's not. He's okay with them. He's not fighting against them. He doesn't need them as a scapegoat yet, I guess is really what it is. But it demonstrates that Paul is able to kind of have some liberty. He's just there to hang out and wait on this trial. He's under house arrest more than he's not in a dungeon. He's not chained up. He's just got one soldier that's kind of hanging out with him, making sure he doesn't get away. I'm like, isn't it funny though, just to kind of think for a moment, that God in all of this, he's even put Paul in a company of people that would typically not have heard the gospel or not have been willing to listen to somebody. Well, you imagine now he's like Paul's roommate, basically. I gotta imagine this guy's hearing all about Jesus. Is understanding all these stories and seeing everything that's happened, and probably is a little curious why all of this time and effort and money and everything is going to take care of this one guy. It would make you curious enough to know what he's about. God is using even these things to start this movement of Christianity that goes within the Praetorian Guard. And do you know that once you get into that, these guys, if you're a soldier, you don't know where you're going to live next week. You can move all over the world. That's still a thing. That's just the way things are. We have people from our church right now that are in South Korea, that are in England, just within the last year. That's just a normal thing that happens. It's the same way here. Whenever you were sent someplace, you went to that place. And so if you were now a Christian, if you were following Christ in the midst of your job, and now you're going into a different place, it's like you're having this built-in missionary service that's happening just because God is putting Paul into this place that is in really close contact with these soldiers. Verse 17 says, after 3 days he had called together the local leaders of the Jews, and when they had gathered, he said to them, brothers, though I had done nothing against our people or the customs of our fathers, yet I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans. When they had examined me, they wished to set me at liberty, because there was no reason for the death penalty in my case. But because the Jews objected, I was compelled to appeal to Caesar, though I had no charge to bring against my nation. For this reason, therefore, I have asked to see you and speak with you, since it is because of the hope of Israel that I'm wearing this chain. And they said to him, we have received no letters from Judea about you, and none of the brothers coming here have reported anything speaking evil against you. But we desire to hear from you what your views are with regard to this sect. We know that everything it is spoken against. Basically, everything that they're hearing about the way, the Christianity, the followers of Jesus is negative. It's spoken against. But nobody's come here and said anything necessarily against Paul. So they're willing to hear him out. They want to know. They're curious. What's all the fuss about? And so in verse 23 it says, when they had appointed a day for him, they came to him at his lodging in greater numbers. From morning until evening, he expounded to them, testifying to the kingdom of God and trying to convince them about Jesus from the law of Moses and from the prophets. And some were convinced by what he said, but others disbelieved. And disagreeing among themselves, they departed after Paul had made one statement. The Holy Spirit was right in saying to your fathers through Isaiah the prophet. This is rough. Go to this people and say, you will indeed hear, but never understand. And you will indeed see, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and with their ears they can barely hear. And their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. Therefore, let it be known to you that this salvation of God has been sent to the Gentiles, for they will listen. So Paul has an assembly of Jews at his lodging. I'm curious, because it says he's got a chain on. So I imagine that the soldier's probably hanging out over here too. And he's chained up at this lodging and he's out there preaching. I gotta think that if you've got a chain, that's a pretty good prop, right? That's a pretty good thing to be like, looky here. Like, this is why I have this on, is what I'm about to tell you about. It's not because of all this stuff that they're saying about me speaking against the temple or speaking against our forefathers or any of that stuff. He says, because of Jesus. That's the whole reason that I have this on. And it says some of them are convinced. Some of them listen and they hear. They perceive. Their hearts are enlightened and they understand. And so, but others do not. And so Paul in that moment takes it to quote Isaiah into this, man, just a devastating statement. He says that these people's hearts have grown dull, that hearing they will never, or listening they'll never hear, or hearing they'll never listen, that their hearts are unable to perceive and understand, that they're just never, they can see it all day, but they're never going to perceive. There are some people, and I don't know why, I don't understand it, but you are going to talk to them, and talk to them, and talk to them, and talk to them. And they are not going to listen to you. I don't understand that. Sometimes we feel like if we just come up with the right metaphor or analogy, or if we just have the right argument, or if they have a question and we answer it in just the right way, that we can convince them. We have to remember that the ability to perceive even is a gift of God. This isn't our own effort. This isn't our own ability. That every aspect of our salvation is from Him. That we have been given a gift of salvation. And whether or not you accept it or not, it's the gift to even hear about it. Think about the fact that it's a gift that Paul is even there to share with them at this specific time. There are going to be people that you try and try and try. And I'm not saying to stop. Don't ever stop. Continue on. Because there are people that you'll pray for 30 years. And 30 years in one day, they'll come to Christ. And there are people that you'll witness to and pray for your entire life. And they won't. It drives me crazy. It used to drive me a lot more crazy because I thought it was all on my shoulders. To remember and to know that this is God's work that we're involved in. That it doesn't rise and fall on what we do. This church will not rise and fall on me or on your next pastor or on the leadership that works within it. We get to participate in these things. But the increase is His. The actual work is done by Him. There's a double thing that comes there, because on one side, it's so free to know that our job is to share and proclaim, but we can't create the response, right? Don't you wish you could? Don't you wish you knew the right words to say to everybody that would just flip the switch in their brain? I get it. Have you ever driven yourself crazy trying to learn all the answers to all the questions that anyone would ever ask you? I know I've had conversations with some of you guys in this room about how to share with specific people. Just trying to figure those things out. Because we want people to know Christ. And that's such an awesome motivation. But it's freeing to know that God is the one that provides the actual increase, the response. He's the one that enlightens the heart. It doesn't change our responsibility. Man, it gives us a measure, I guess, of relief. So Paul says, hearing you're never going to hear, seeing you're never going to see, hearts are grown dull. It says, therefore let it be known to you that this salvation of God has been sent to the Gentiles because they will listen. That's the book of Acts in a nutshell. It's been this over and over and over again. That Paul is going to the Jews. He's proclaiming, he's sharing, he's going through the Old Testament. He's not even saying like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff that you need to know that's going on right now. Here's what's happening. He's saying, here's all the Old Testament, and here's what Christ has done that fulfills it. And if you've ever found somebody that can take you through the Old Testament and explain salvation to you, it is an amazing thing because it's different than just going through the New Testament and saying, here's what happened, believe it. When somebody can take you through all the old prophecies and show how Christ fulfills every aspect of it. And that's what he's doing. And he's a master at this. I mean, he's a Pharisee. He knows all the arguments. He knows exactly how to say it. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't change their heart. So he says, I'm going to go to the Gentiles. All of this salvation that God has promised to you, it's been given to the Gentiles now. Now that doesn't mean that God has taken it away from the Jews. It means that he's invited the Gentiles into this thing. He's made a way for us to be a part of it, to be grafted in to the vine. And that is, man, I think as we read through parts of the Bible, that should be one of those that, if you're a Gentile like me, you should maybe read it and then like do a little dance like, I get to be in, yes, yes, yes. Like, it's such an incredible thing, and we just don't even really think that much about it. It's just like, obviously, we're in the church, duh. Like, but man, this is a gift. It wasn't guaranteed. There was a ton of time where you would have had to do something completely different to get in. And now he's made a way for you to be his. Period. There's a difference between manuscripts. The oldest manuscripts don't have verse 29. Some of the newer ones have a scribal note where it says, and when he had said these words, the Jews departed, having much dispute amongst themselves. In verse 30, he says, he lived there 2 whole years at his own expense and welcomed all who came to him, proclaiming the kingdom of God and teaching about the Lord Jesus Christ with all boldness and without hindrance. Paul continued in this way for 2 years at his own expense, and with hospitality he proclaimed the gospel to all. This is the end of the book. This is the last thing that we get to know. Now, if you know the story of Paul, you know that this isn't where things stop. As you go through his letters, you can kind of piece together the rest of the story of where he is going, what he's doing, and the next time that he's in this situation where he's in jail, prison, it's not the same thing. He's in a hole. This prison that he's in later in life is literally, you move part of the stone, drop people in there. If they're really nice to you, they're going to put you on a rope and drop you. Otherwise, they're just going to let you go. And then they cover it back up. So you're in a dark, damp dungeon, literally. It's not the situation that he's in right now, but that is ultimately where he ends up. On his way to Spain, it looks like he's actually beheaded. But we don't get that. I think there probably was maybe like an Acts Part 2 that was going to be penned at some point, but I don't think they made it to that point. But as you go through and you read this, if you just sat down and read from Acts 1 to Acts 28 this afternoon, and you just consider and think about all the things that God did to move everything in this direction to where Paul is now standing before this is the seat of power on earth at this point. This is the greatest empire that our world has ever known. Is it 1,000 years? Like 1,000 years? You know how long 1,000 years is? That's a long time. You think about how long ago George Washington lived from us. Like it's just weird. We don't think about that. Think about 4 times that amount of time. That's a long time. Paul is standing before this place and is able to proclaim the gospel in this city, this, very important, major part of the world. And it all started just back in Jerusalem. It started with a bunch of guys standing around praying and the Holy Spirit coming upon them and giving them power to go out and do these things. And that same power that was given to them at that point, that was given to Paul to go all these, is this power that we have within us. And he did not give us this power to simply sit around and wait around until we go to heaven. He didn't give us the Holy Spirit to live within us so that we can just hang out and make our life as comfortable as possible until we leave. He gave us this so that we can use this one life that we've been given to proclaim His excellencies, His goodness, His mercy. To use our life in a way to demonstrate submission so that we can showcase to the rest of the world what it means to have a hope that is in Him and Him alone. If we simply live our lives in the same way that everyone else is living their lives, but say we get to go to heaven at the end and you don't, I don't think there's much power in that. Jesus didn't die to keep us from smoking or chewing or running with girls who do, all that, rated R movies, but not PG-13, but we get to have our own little, thing about all this stuff. He didn't die to give us a list. He didn't rise to give us a list. He rose to give us life. And to allow us to use that life, consider this, that you have the privilege of using your life to demonstrate the glory of God. Whether that means you live and you have an easy life, or you get your head cut off in the Middle East proclaiming Jesus. Man, that's a privilege. It's an awesome thing that you get to steward with your life. Your money, your time, your kids, your family. All of those things have been given to you as a gift to steward, to demonstrate how awesome God is, what He's done for us. So the question that comes up at the end of Acts, as you look at this, we're not at the end of Paul, we're at the end of Acts, but it's not a thing of okay, well, what are you going to do? Or to put a guilt trip on you or anything like that. Because that doesn't do a whole lot for me. I might feel guilty for an afternoon and then I forget about it and move on with my life, right? But to really understand about who He is, that Paul wasn't doing all of this because he felt guilty or, this is what I should do, or, if I don't, God's going to get me, or, something like that. That the motivation of our hearts and our lives and of who we are is a love for God and a love for the people that we are around. I've been guilted into telling people about Jesus so many times in my life. I spent a lot of time knocking on doors and doing surveys and talking to people because I felt guilty, because I was told that their blood would be on my hands. I was told that if I didn't, just every single person that I ever encountered immediately share the gospel with them, that their blood was on my hands and I would be guilty of it. That's a rough motivation. But when you start to cultivate a love for people, when you start to turn your eyes and your mind and your attention and your heart away from yourself and out into this world and those people that are around you, and to see people rather than just a opposing political view or a drain on something that you see as valuable or just whatever, you start to see people as made in the image of God. And you start to love people and cultivate that love more and more. And that doesn't mean that you never get aggravated with people. Right? We understand that. But it means that we move our hearts and our mind more and more towards a love for people that motivates us to not want to see them die apart from grace. To know what we know. It's like walking around in the desert with water, right? You would be the worst person in the world that just didn't want to give anybody water, right? But that's not just it. It's that you look out and you see people that are literally dying, starving to death. And you have this thing that you can give. You have the power to do so. It's not a guilty thing to say, just go do it because if you don't, their blood's on your hands. It's nothing like that. Why don't we love the way that He loves us? It's a question of more like motivation and our own thoughts, I guess. What has got our attention so wrapped up that we forget that we're here on purpose? What are we so busy doing that we cater to ourselves constantly? And this isn't me saying it to you as like, I'm not doing that and you are. That's us, me, right there with you. We all do this. What's got to change? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer for you. I honestly don't know the answer for me. But I do know that the more that I turn my affection towards him, the more he opens my heart towards other people. The more that I stop watching all the stupid news and these people that are manipulating you for money. That's all it is. They do not care about you. Turn it off. Go out and talk to your neighbors. Talk to the next person that you're in line with at the Dollar General. You might get a weird conversation. You can get a really weird one sometimes. But, you might be able to share the gospel with them too. Turn your affection towards him and allow him to demonstrate his love through you. As we've gone through the book of Acts and we've seen that over and over again, it's not the point to hold Paul up as the ultimate Christian, but it's the point to demonstrate the providence of God at work through the church, in the church. It demonstrates that God desires that all nations would know him and his great love for them through the sacrifice of Jesus, as well as his power over all things, including the last enemy, which is death. That's the point of the entire book there. It's not that, wow, Paul is a ninja Christian. It's that you have been given this power the same as Paul. You have been given the ability to go out into a world that is lost and dying and to lay down your life to demonstrate love in a way that it's just not another way to do it other than to showcase who he is. The question that comes away is that I ask myself, I won't say that I ask you this, what I ask myself as I come to the book of Acts is, what hinders me from that? What stops me? What is it that's in my life right now that I need to turn my attention away from? What is it that pulls me towards it that is not good? I can't answer those things for you. I wouldn't ask you to come up here and try to write it down and lay it down or anything like that. It's the thing that you have to ask God to reveal. That you ask, and Lord, would you please just reveal what it is in my heart, what it is that I'm after, what are my motivations, what do I really care about? And would you make it you? Would you make it you? That's what this entire thing is about. If I can leave you guys with anything, after 7 years of being your pastor, is love each other and love this group of people that are around you. Don't be aggravated and irritated by everything that everyone does. Because if you live like that, you're just going to go crazy. You're just going to be an angry, crazy person. Turn your attention, try to see the world the way that God sees the world. The way that he saw you. And remember that you were in the same position as many of them. You were not lovely. Many of you have told me how unlovely you were. I'm the same way, man. I know who I was. I know who I am. And it reminds me constantly that I don't deserve this. This salvation that he's given me is not deserved by me. But it was a gift. That he sought me out and gave it to me. And has called me to follow him. And I want to encourage you guys not only to do that, to follow him and share that, but also to encourage one another in doing that and sharing that. I love you guys. Let's pray.